I made the acquaintance of a man named Norton who was working in a shipyard at the time. Norton, whose real name was Morelli or something like that, had been discharged from the peacetime army for forging a paycheck. Was classified 4F for reasons of bad character. He looked like George Rapp, but was taller. Norton was trying to improve his English and achieve a smooth, affable manner. Affability, however, did not come natural to him.
This is unixcab, Zeitgeist Weekly, number 1 of Volume 1. We have an interesting situation here, which I have not seen since the original video that YouTube now seems very interested in my, as they refer to it respectfully, monetizing. I think what they mean is a lot less people will see it if they have to pay for it. And since after some thinking about it, perhaps within 1 or 2 jiffies, as you will know, that's 1/100th of a second, approximately the same period as what I've come up with in my own research and thought experiments, though mostly research, and one definitely unintended experiment in Memphis, Tennessee. The concept that there isn't any subconscious or any such Freudian idea, except that there is a device, a mechanism, a dynamic, which is the same, probably performs the same functions, and other uses, which is the preconscious. It takes place about, and I was able to measure this during the unfortunate and certainly undeserved torturous experiment that I engaged later, since the memory of every bit of it was 100% clear to me, since the people that I'm speaking about love statistics so much, having physics envy to the point of something obscene, especially in the sense that I, as you are, I'm sure, are interested in the commonweal, and the crowd is the untruth. The human self actualizing is what we all, and certainly the specialists in MD psychiatry and the subregions and out of bounds areas that could be called penumbra, or the plural of that, are given to because they don't have any way of other measurements. And measuring something with statistics is sort of like, catching a Minnesota muskie lung with a needle, and hopefully puncturing enough parts of the lake, you'll eventually get your muskie lung. It's absurd. And these people ought to be, if they're so interested in statistics, that's fine. Probability and statistics have a lot of use here and there in the intellectual and productive use of intelligence and learning. But it certainly isn't about self-actualization. It certainly isn't about the true human self, which without there is no such thing as soul. If there is no self, that is to say, individual qualities that are not distributable and are not found outside of that singularity, if it weren't for the fact that each of us, you and I, are selves and unique like snowflakes, to coin a term, there wouldn't be any soul. Drones, zombies, and more specifically, clones couldn't possibly have a soul. A soul must have. It is imperative that a soul must be a singularity. You cannot clone a soul, put it that way. Well, so tonight we have a person walking around speaking very loudly on a cell phone, going around the block, talking in vague code, and he seems to be interested in some kind of transaction. I've got a little bit of it so far. We'll see how we do. Maybe we'll get some more from France 24 Observer's favorite observer, the polymath guy who was unfollowed within hours of being followed by Eveling, with an L as in Larry, in Paris, Eve Jackson, but maybe Annette, maybe Claire, maybe Jessica, and some of the others will do what they're being paid to do besides reporting, extremely well reporting the news, collecting it, interviewing people, and so in that sense really finding news. You know, it's clear that the channel's owners, directors, and managers are interested in this French, located apparently, reportedly in Paris, are interested in getting viewers to relax and feel better about things, which has been a way to, sometimes with a dog, a pretty girl and a dog is a cliche, or used to be, I've read about. There's more than a little evidence for this, but I'm not going to I have no business here with regard to other people too much where it doesn't help me. I frankly like the way they dress very much indeed, and I don't see why anyone wouldn't if they're normal. I watched Red Dragon last night, and I can see that there are people who we wouldn't want to see décolleté wardrobe on a news anchor. But frankly, it's not at all offensive in my panoptically ethical and almost always moral point of view. But there are going to be people that will take anything and stop at nothing to make their illusory point. France 24 is a great source of news about the world, not so much about Asia, and they seem to be free of the NLP and Ericksonian hypnosis techniques of the Ad Council and local radio, which I haven't listened to here in Albany, New York, really Del Mar, or Waterville. I haven't listened to any local stations for 3 years, 4 years. And I haven't allowed myself a television set in my home anywhere for 14 years. So What do you think of that? That's pretty much a non-issue, I suppose. I don't know. It depends on what you do with the television, and I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. And that's the point. You go ahead. You watch your television. You don't let those people take your TV away from you. And if you don't like what's going on here, may I suggest that there's a channel that I'm watching right now, which has to do with a gentleman that I'm trying to show to France 24's producers and editors, and I hopefully will be able to do that for the Commonweal, for the Neighborhood Watch, and for the Watch, which would, I hope, and I pray, to the Lord Jesus Christ. I hope and I pray to the Lord Jesus Christ, the God of the Holy Trinity, the one actual divinity and God of the one true faith. I hope that this will make some continued progress the way I had apparently been overconfident for a few months, as you will see if you go to the original video from this location in either Del Mar or Waterville. The police will know where it is. And that's good, because they do a very, very good job, especially if you index that with the degree of difficulty, which tantamountly is impossible. And that's my opinion. Yeah, it's true my dad was a police officer, among other things, but all of them laudable. But I'm not going to tell you my address, but the police certainly will know where it is. And they will certainly know where it is beyond certainty, if you like Aristotle so much, and ontology even more, within a few more episodes of unixcab's Weekly Aeitgeist.
You could see the brain there and the blood coming out of it. Jack began to laugh uncontrollably. My girl was waiting out in the car. She called me a cold-blooded killer. He laughed until his face was purple. A few nights after meeting Roy and Herman, I used one of the cigarettes, which was my first experience with junk. A cigarette is like a toothpaste tube with a needle on the end. You push a pin down through the needle, the pin punctures the seal, and the cigarette is ready to shoot. Morphine hits the backs of the legs first, then the back of the neck. A spreading wave of relaxation, slackening the muscles away from the bones so that you seem to float without outlines, like lying in warm salt water. As this relaxing wave spread, I experienced a strong feeling of fear. I had the feeling that some horrible image was just beyond the field of vision, moving as I turned my head so that I never quite saw it. I felt nauseous. I lay down and closed my eyes. A series of pictures passed like watching a movie. A huge neon-lighted cocktail bar that got larger and larger until streets, traffic, and street repairs were included in it. A waitress carrying a skull on a tray, stars in the clear sky, the physical impact of the fear of death, the shutting off of breath, the stopping of blood. I dozed off and woke up with a start of fear. Next morning I vomited and felt sick until noon. Roy called that night. About what we were discussing the other night, he said, I could go about $4 per box and take 5 boxes now. Are you busy? I'll come over to your place. We'll come to some kind of agreement. A few minutes later, he knocked at the door. He had on a Glen plaid suit and a dark, coffee-colored shirt. We said hello, and he looked around blankly and said, if you don't mind, I'll take one of those now. I opened the box. He took out a cigarette and injected it into his leg. He pulled up his pants briskly and took out $20. I put 5 boxes on the kitchen table. I think I'll take them out of the boxes, he said. Too bulky. He began putting the cigarettes into his coat pockets. I don't think they'll perforate this way, he said. Listen, I'll call you again in a day or so after I get rid of these and have some more money. Next day he was back. He shot another cigarette and pulled out $40. I laid out 10 boxes and kept 2. These are for me, I said. He looked at me surprised. You use it? Now and then. It's bad stuff, he said, shaking his head. The worst thing that can happen to a man. We all think we can control it at first. Sometimes we don't want to control it. He laughed. I'll take all you can get at that price. Next day he was back. He asked if I didn't want to change my mind about selling the 2 boxes. I said no. He bought 2 cigarettes for $1 each, shot them both, and left. During the next month, I used up the 8 cigarettes I had not sold. The fear I had experienced after using the first cigarette was not noticeable after the 3rd, but still, from time to time after taking a shot, I would wake up with a start of fear. After 6 weeks or so, I gave Roy a ring. I said, say, do you have any to sell? The material I sold you before? There was a pause. Yes, he said. I can let you have 6, but the price will have to be $3 per. You understand, I don't have many. Okay, I said, you know the way. Bring it on over. It was 12 1/2 grain tablets in a thin glass tube. I paid him $18 and he apologized again for the retail rate. Next day he bought 2 grains back. It's mighty hard to get now at any price, he said, looking for a vein in his leg and shot the liquid in. Later that day, Roy pointed out to me a drugstore where they sold needles without any questions. Very few drugstores will sell them without a prescription. He showed me how to make a collar out of paper to fit the needle to an eyedropper. An eyedropper is easier to use than a regular hypo, especially for giving yourself vein shots. Several days later, Roy sent me to see a doctor with a story about kidney stones to hit him for a morphine prescription. The doctor's wife slammed the door in my face. But Roy finally got past her and made the doctor for a 10-grain script. The doctor's office was in junk territory on 102nd Street off Broadway. He was a doddering old man and could not resist the junkies who filled his office and were, in fact, his only patients. It seemed to give him a feeling of importance to look out and see an office full of people. Roy shipped out at 2 or 3 week intervals. His trips for Army transport are generally short. When he was in town, we generally split a few scripts. The old croaker on 102nd finally lost his mind altogether, and no drugstore would fill his scripts. But Roy located an Italian doctor out in the Bronx who would write. I was taking a shot from time to time, but I was a long way from having a habit. At this time, I moved into an apartment on the Lower East Side. It was a tenement apartment with a front door opening into the kitchen. One day, Herman told me about a kilo of first-class New Orleans weed I could pick up for $70. Pushing weed looks good on paper like fur farming or raising frogs. At 75 cents a stick, 70 sticks to the ounce, it sounded like money. I was convinced and bought the weed. Herman and I formed a partnership to push the weed. We located a lesbian named Miriam, who lived in the village and said she was a poetess. We kept the weed in Miriam's apartment, turned her on for all she could use, and gave her 50% on sales. And she knew a lot of T-heads. Another lesbian moved in with her, and every time I went to Miriam's apartment, there was this huge red-haired Lizzie watching me with her cold fish eyes full of stupid hate. One day, the red-haired Lizzie opened the door and stood there, her face dead white and puffy with Nematol sleep. She shoved a package of weed at me. Take this and get out, she said. You're both motherfuckers. She was half asleep. Her voice was matter-of-fact, as if referring to actual incest. I said, tell Miriam thanks for everything. She slammed the door. The noise evidently woke her up. She opened the door again and began screaming with hysterical rage. We could still hear her out on the street. Herman contacted other T-heads. They all gave us static. In practice, pushing weed is a headache. To begin with, weed is bulky. You need a full suitcase to realize any money. If the cops start kicking your door in, it's like being with a bale of alfalfa. T-heads are not like junkies. A junkie hands you the money, takes his junk and cuts. But T-heads don't do things that way. They expect the peddler to light them up and sit around talking for half an hour to sell $2 worth of weed. If you come right to the point, they say you're a bring-down. In fact, a peddler should not come right out and say he is a peddler. No, he just scores for a few good cats and chicks because he is viperish. Everyone knows that he himself is the connection, but it is bad form to say so. God knows why. To me, T-heads are unfathomable. I soon found out I couldn't get along with these characters, and I was glad to find someone to take the tea off my hands at cost. I decided right then I would never push any more tea. In 1937, weed was placed under the Harrison Narcotics Act. Narcotics authorities claim it is a habit-forming drug, that its use is injurious to mind and body, and that it causes the people who use it to commit crimes. Here are the facts. Weed is positively not habit-forming. You can smoke weed for years, and you will experience no discomfort if your supply is suddenly cut off. I have seen T-heads in jail, and none of them showed withdrawal symptoms. I smoked weed myself, off and on, for 15 years, and never missed it when I ran out. There is less habit to weed than there is to tobacco. Weed does not harm the gem